Hello, my friends. 2023. I know you are looking to get certified as a PMP, and you've probably come across Process Groups, a practice guide. Majorly because the PMI have been pushing it on their website. If you go to their website, you can find it advertised. They are packaging this together with the 7th edition. Why is that? Because the 7th edition does not have enough substance for you to understand traditional project management. And the PMI have put that out. You can download it. And today we are going in on the process groups. By the time we're done, you will have a very clear idea of the process groups of project management and the differences between process groups, knowledge areas, processes, and phases. So let's jump straight into it. I call this the process group pentagon. I put this together to give you context. We have initiating the project, where we authorize the project, planning, where we plan the project, executing, where we do the work that we planned, monitoring and controlling, where we're checking the work that we're doing, making sure it's going according to plan, and if not, pivoting, changing something. And then we've got closing, which is closing out the project or phasing the project. For your exam, you really need to know what these are in your own words, right? So initiating is authorization, planning is organizing, arranging in advance, executing is doing, monitoring and controlling is checking and acting, and closing is finalizing. Okay? 5 process groups. Now, to build on that awareness, my friends, there's a page that is missing from this dialogue. You will not find it in this book. Instead, you'll find it here around page 555. And I want to show you, I want to sensitize you to the importance of this page that is missing. This page that is missing shows you process group interaction. So first of all, you got initiated. You initiate the project. It's authorization, okay? You authorize the project and you don't finish initiating the project before you begin to overlap the planning. So it's not do all the initiating, then do all the planning. No. There is overlap in these process groups. So you initiate, there's phases that are also happening in the background of technical work. I'm going to show you that later on. But for now, I want you to see initiating as the project manager and the project management team doing the authorization, doing the planning. And then there's executing, which also overlaps with initiating and planning. So think about it like this. You initiate, but you're also planning at the same time. And that goes on for some duration in the project. You can see right here, we have the timeline. So there's initiating happening, there's planning happening, and there's executing. Now, in terms of level of effort, what this is showing you is that the effort involved in doing the work is a little bit more than what is used to plan the work under most circumstances, right? Then we have monitoring and controlling. You can see these span almost across the entire project, and there's heavy overlap. This is how it happens, not linearly, but like this. And then lastly, we have closing the project, which also overlaps with these areas because closing can actually start a lot earlier than the end of the timeline. So we have this overlap. This is how you need to see the process groups. Not linearly, like 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. No. There's a lot of overlap. And guess what? There's a lot of iterative work. So we iteratively initiate. What does that mean? Well, you identify your stakeholders. You don't do it one time. You're going to do it iteratively. You plan. You don't plan one time. You plan all throughout the project in layers. You replan. There are going to be changes that necessitate replanning. You're going to monitor and control, and that could trigger change that will also contribute to more planning. You execute, things aren't going according to plan, then you got to tweak the plan. So there's a lot of overlap. But there's one word I mentioned in the very beginning to pique your interest, and that is phases. And I want to make a statement to help you. Process groups are not phases. Think about that for a moment. Process groups are not phases. Process groups are groups of processes that the project manager and the project management team carry out in order to manage the project work. See? So it's what the project manager does to manage the project. That is what a process group is. A process group is not the same as a phase. A phase is executing the technical work. See? A process group is managing the work. There's a difference between managing the work and doing the work. Have you ever had a boss who was really, really good in managing, but when it came to doing the work, he was clueless? That's why he hired you. That's why she hired you, because you're the person who understands what needs to be done, right? Have you ever been in that place before? I have. So there's a difference between process groups and phases, and that's what I'm showing you on this next slide. Process groups, what the project manager does to manage the project. So initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and controlling and closing. Process groups, right? Phases, this is what the development team does, the project team. This is the technical work that the project team does to create the deliverable or do the work. Coding, testing, development. And I've got an example of a typical life cycle of work. It's analysis, design, develop, test, implement, and you could evaluate. That's an example of a typical life cycle, a typical product, if you will, or project life cycle, depending on how far you span it out. It becomes a product life cycle if you're talking about the repetitive analysis, design, development, testing, implement, and evaluating across the life of the product. But if you're talking about just the confines of one little project within the life of a product, then we call it a project life cycle. But more on that in the 7th edition. But let's move on. Here's an example of the process group pentagon we just saw. Initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and controlling, and closing. Hopefully you've mastered this. I prefer eating mangoes chilled. Now, I want to show you an example of a generic development life cycle. This could be used to build anything, to create any product. It typically follows this rhythm. There's some sort of analysis, design, develop, test, implement, and evaluate. There's typically, you start off with analysis. That's number one. Start off with analysis. Then you do some design. Then you develop. Now, in all truthfulness, there could be some iterative type of development going on where you don't just do analysis and forget it. You do design and you go back to the analysis. And then you move again to design, and then you move to develop. And as you're developing, you realize there needs to be some other type of design going on. So what I'm saying in essence is there's feedback loops along the way, and the people who put this together at Rolls-Royce, when they did their waterfall model, they made it very clear that it wasn't a one-time linear flow, that there could be going back. So when you look at predictive project management, I want you to understand that it doesn't mean once you leave a phase, you never go back. No, you could. You could, right? You could. So there could be some overlap and some back and forth in this model. But I want you to look at this as a generic development life cycle. The PMI refers to this as a project life cycle. So there's a difference between a project life cycle versus a process group, right? So this development life cycle, you may hear it being referred to as a project life cycle, but it's really where you have phases. So analysis, that's a phase. Design, that's a phase. These are all phases in a project life cycle. I call it generic development life cycle. Okay? So I hope that makes sense. So now you've got an idea of the difference between these process groups versus a project life cycle. You now know the difference. And you also remember from what I told you earlier that there's overlap. So as this stuff is happening, my friends, there are phases going on in a parallel place on that timeline. We're just not showing it. But now I want to give you an idea to think about both together. So process groups plus project lifecycle gives you a model that looks like this. You got initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and controlling and closing happening across a big old timeline, like I showed you, across the entire project. And then in the nucleus of it, I'm showing you that analysis, design, develop, test, implement, evaluate, all happening at once. And that's why in time past, the PMI would tell you that on every project, there are two life cycles happening. There's one which is called a project life cycle, which is this one in the nucleus. But in traditional project management, when you hear project management life cycle, that is also code for process groups. Okay? There's a subtle difference. Let's do that again. Process groups, also called in traditional space a project management life cycle. Did you catch that? Project management life cycle. Not the same as phases. Ain't no phases here, my friends. This is just process groups. But in traditional project management space, you could also hear them referring to this as a project management, don't miss the word management, project management life cycle. Now, when you hear the term project life cycle, they're talking about this one. Project management life cycle, this one. Project life cycle, this one. And when you put the worlds together, you got something like this. This is how it happens. Two things going on at the same time. Now, that's just one view. We could manage projects by looking at this broad overview with both of these life cycles on top of each other. But we can also look at it like this. We could look at it like this, where we have all of those phases, right, merged with process groups. I'm going to show it to you. All right. So remember, the very first one that happens is analysis. So let me show you all of them. Analysis, design, develop, test, implement, evaluate. Now I want you to see it like this. On top of every one of these is every phase has a process group set happening at the same time. So you need to change how you're looking at it. You need to see every phase as having initiate the phase, plan the phase, execute the phase, monitor and control the phase, close the phase. Initiate design, plan design, execute design, monitor and control, close. You got your design. Develop. Initiate, plan, execute, monitor, control, close. Initiate, plan, do the same for test, do the same for implement, do the same for evaluate. Follow the 5 process groups in the nucleus of each phase. So you got 2 potential models to really hit home. On some projects, they're straight with 2 overlapped on top of each other, but you got other projects where they are phase gates. And those phase gates necessitate some closure of each phase. In those instances, you could see it like this, or a melding of both. But it's very important, my friends, that you do not see process groups as phases. They're not. The phases are analysis, design, develop, test, implement, evaluate. Generic. Every industry has its own unique terminology, right? The big takeaway, process groups are not phases. Okay, so we've established that. Are we good? Hit me up with a chat if we're not. Okay, everybody clear about that? Good. Now, when you understand the concept of process groups, you also need to understand the concept of knowledge areas, which is very intuitive. It's very straightforward. So I'm going to give you a quick reminder of the process group and the knowledge areas together. Okay? For your PMP exam, this is the world you need to see. 5 process groups and 10 knowledge areas of integration, scope, schedule, cost, quality, resources, communications, risk, procurement, and stakeholder. I put risk in the middle like a bullseye because it touches everything. I've got videos on that you can watch on this channel. But let's go a step further and let me show you what PMI have added when they published this one. When they published this one, they introduced the concept of principles. Being a caring, respectful, diligent steward, collaborating, generating an atmosphere of collaboration, engaging with the stakeholder, value, and all of this. I've covered this in another video. But I want you to visualize the principles at the base. Okay? Now that you understand this, let's expand on each one of these knowledge areas super fast. Okay. So, the knowledge areas. Very first one, integration. What exactly is it? Integration is about the overall coordination of the project work. Scope is about identifying all that needs to be done and managing it. Schedule is about managing the timeline. Cost is about managing the budget, ensuring you're not going off. Quality is about identifying quality targets and meeting them. Resource management is all about managing human, equipment, material, supplies, and facility kind of resources. Communications management is about planning and managing communications. Risk management is about planning and managing uncertainties that impact the project. Procurement management is about managing contracts and procurements. And lastly, stakeholder management is about managing stakeholder engagement. Managing stakeholder engagement. So now you've got a very good idea of the knowledge areas. I want to show you the next thing to focus on. The next thing to focus on for your exam is putting both together. Putting the world of knowledge areas with the world of process groups. When you do that, you get this table that you know all too well on page 25 of the PMBOK guide. This table. Okay. That's what you get. Now, I'm going to try my best to make this fit on the screen better so that you can see the enormity of what is involved here. So let me switch to a full screen. Now you get the idea of what this entails, okay? You got 5 process groups at the top, 10 knowledge areas at the side, 49 processes. I've got a video where I go through every bit of this on the channel. I want to implore you to watch that video and get good with it. Now, on top of this, my friends, I have out there the cheat sheet, which I have called Phil's cheat sheet. This, if you Google it, Phil's cheat sheet, is going to come up. But I'm going to put a link below so that you can see the cheat sheet. Now, let me show you how it works. Let me show you how it works. This is how it works. Cheat sheet for definitions. Page 25 for names. And as you go back and forth between these two, you are going to become more familiar with what exactly the process is. Not just the name, but the description of the process, okay? Now, page 25, mastering it like I did in a previous video is great. But you know what you need to do? You need to go that next level. And that next level is identifying the 20% that gives you an 80% return, just like Pareto's principle. There's 20% of these processes that if you were to master the flow of them, it will give you a massive return towards your PMP exam, or maybe you're even taking CAPM, whatever you're taking, this will help you, okay? I know for the longest time, a lot of instructors have said, this table, you don't need it anymore, you don't need it. No, that's not true, that's not true. I beg to differ. This table is a lifesaver. This table is like your guide, it's like your GPS. If they flung you out of the helicopter in the dark, of course, with a parachute, you'd be able to find out where you were if you knew page 25. If you don't know page 25, you don't know the names, you don't know the definitions of what you're doing, you could have big problems on the exam. So don't listen to the people who like gloating that they got certified and I got certified in 2 days. Forget that. You're different. Maybe you need more time. It's okay, right? Don't let people mind shame you. There's a lot of mind shaming going on. People say, I only studied for 1 month and I'm a PMP. Good luck to you, buddy. Maybe I need to spend 6 months, huh? Just like I actually did. So don't let anyone pressure you into being a speed demon to get certified, because a lot of people have tried that and they've had to do it again and again. You don't want that. So you take your time, okay? With that said, I'm off my soapbox, but I'm on to show you what I call the PMBOK guide mainline. This is going to help someone who is trying to put together this enormous map. Yes, you can dump the map, but what is the flow? Here's the flow. It starts off not with our introduction slide, my friends. I apologize for that. That's not intentional. But it starts off like this. It starts off with the development of the project charter. So we have develop project charter that happens first, and it gives us an output, the project charter. The project charter is all about authorization. It authorizes the project. It authorizes you, the project manager, to apply resources to the project. When you have developed your project charter, it becomes an input to the identify stakeholders process. This is where you are identifying who the project could affect, who could be affected by the project, and who thinks they could be affected by the project. You get your stakeholder register, but let's go back to develop project charter. The project charter goes into the development of the project management plan, and we get a project management plan that then feeds direct and manage project work. Now you can see these folks are working on that conveyor belt. We've got Charlie there, and then we're going to find out, is he doing a good job? Well, if he is doing a good job, we should get an output from direct and manage project work called deliverables. The deliverable becomes an input to control quality. Now, just in case you're wondering why you've got this lilac color and you got this gold color, the gold is integration processes. Develop project charter, develop project management plan, direct to manage project work. Okay? Now, this thing I'm showing you right here is the map of how things flow at a very high level across the PMBOK guide. I'm not going through all 49. I'm only showing you the line of most important fit. So in control quality, we've got this character again, checking the product. In control quality, this is where we are inspecting the product or service or result. In other words, we are inspecting the deliverable. Now, if this deliverable is found to be good, of course, following the project management plan to understand how to control quality, if the output is good, then the control quality process is going to give us an output called a verified deliverable. So what is the difference between a deliverable and a verified deliverable? A verified deliverable is one that has been checked for correctness. A deliverable, as casually called deliverable, has not gone through any checks, any inspection. So keep that in mind. Okay. Moving forward from here, my friends, we see that verified deliverable going to validate scope, where the customer now is going to check the verified deliverable. And if the customer is happy, like it looks, the customer is happy, we then get an output called accepted deliverable. Now, I want you to pay close attention to the differences here. We have deliverable right here, not checked. Verified deliverable, checked by us, the performing organization, and then accepted deliverable checked by the customer. There is a difference between all three. And I want you to register that difference because it will help you, my friends. All right? So now you've got the idea of the deliverable, the verified deliverable, and the accepted deliverable. The accepted deliverable becomes an input to close project or phase. You're either closing out a phase in the project or the project as a whole, but the bottom line is you're going to get those accepted deliverables going in there, and you are going to create a final report, and there's going to be a final product, service, or result transition to the customer. This right here is part of the mainline. If you have been able to follow along with this little piece of it, we're going to step up things a little bit with a little bit more advanced content so that you got a better idea of the 49 process flow without dabbling into every single one of the 49. Okay? So the next thing I want to call your attention to is there's a big old main line, and that's why I call it a main line. There's a main line supplying the project management plan everywhere except develop project charter and develop project management plan. So your project management plan goes to all non-integration monitoring and controlling processes. Okay, let's zoom in. Your project management plan goes to all those places, and then out of the non-integration monitoring and controlling processes, this is just one of the sources of change requests. All change requests go to perform integrated change control, another integration process. And then the project management plan goes into monitor and control project work. But from there, we get work performance reports, and these reports go to perform integrated change control. Why? These reports help us understand whether we should carry out these change requests. If we're not performing well and the reports say we're performing abominably, then these change requests are not going to be done, most likely. Or maybe the report tells us we are behind schedule. Well, that could be grounds for not taking in any change requests. So there's a reason for all these outputs and inputs that you see. You can also see that work performance information feeds monitor and control project work in order to get the work performance reports in the first place. You can also see a statement that I have here which says, all processes except develop project charter and develop project management plan have the project management plan as the input that you see going in there, my friends. So it is really important to remember this. And once you've gotten that down, everything else becomes easier. Moving along here, you can also see work performance data comes out of direct and managed project work, and it feeds all of those non-integration monitoring and controlling processes, and that's how we can get work performance information. So another very important sequence that I want you to observe here is work performance data becomes work performance information after getting processed through here. And that work performance information after getting processed through here, monitor and control project work, becomes work performance reports. Let's do that again. Work performance data coming out of here goes over here to all these non-integration monitoring and controlling processes. Out of that comes work performance information, and out of that comes work performance reports. Once you understand this sequence, you are on your way to simplifying your studying, because the repetition of WPD WPI and WPR could be a little bit frustrating, but when you see this macro view of how everything weaves together, it becomes easier. We're almost done. Moving forward. We also can see the project management plan go into manage project knowledge, also in integration. And you can see deliverable as an input to manage project knowledge, because we can glean a whole lot of knowledge from our deliverable. And that, my friends, is the PMBOK guide mainline. This thing has been around for the past 5 years. Put it together to help you to better understand the enormity of the content. So, today we have talked about a number of things. Here's the recap. We've talked about process groups, a practice guide. PMI is pushing this narrative. You go to their website, you find it. You're a member, you don't need to pay, you can download it. Okay? Second thing we talked about today is the process group pentagon, which is my model. This is not PMI. This is unique to me. I named it such, but it has the process groups from the PMI. I just give you the pentagon so you remember it's 5. And then I've also talked to you about the process group span and interaction. There's a similar image in the PMBOK Guide 6th edition. It is not in PMI's recent publication, process groups. I also said process groups are not phases. I told you process groups, what you need to do to manage the work. Phases, what you need to do the work. And that's a phrase from the great Rita Mulcahy, rest her soul. In her content back in the day, she would say, process groups or project management lifecycle, what you need to do to manage the work. And it's just stuck over the years. And I think it's brilliant, brilliant way of clarifying. Phases is the technical work. Project lifecycle, what you need to do the work. Okay, so there's a difference between process groups, what you need to do to manage the work, and phases, what you need to do the work. I might have crossed those, so please be clear on those. All right, then I showed you the generic development lifecycle, which I told you is also known as a project lifecycle, but when it extends throughout the life of a product, and then we throw in one more cycle called the obsolescence phase, we could say that is for a product life cycle. The 7th edition has some clarifying content about product life cycles. I would advise it. Process groups, we can see, we can merge them with generic development life cycles. In other words, you could say I'm merging a project management life cycle with a project life cycle. It looks something like this. And then I went through all of the cycles in this generic development life cycle and gave you a picture of how the world could look like merged. I also encouraged you to get my Phil's cheat sheet and make sure for each one of these you know the definitions. Okay? And lastly, we went through the PMBOK guide mainline. I have so many videos of this. Just Google it, PMBOK guide mainline, okay? If you're looking for training and help and you feel you've hit a brick wall in your studying, but these have been of value to you and you want more, go on down to Praizion.com, take a look. We've got all sorts of courses and ideas to help you on your PMP, CAPM, Agile exams, whatever you're doing. For those of you that are looking for ACP, keep checking. We've got ACP training coming up in 2023. We just had all 100% passing from all of our current recent students who took the ACP, so congrats to them. But for you who may be taking the PMP, let's help you get to dry land. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share this video with your friends. Thank you very much, my friends. Bye for now.